So I make a plane that flies large explosives, but it isn't exactly going to be easy. Mostly because large explosives are very heavy and also very hard to propel, well, especially if you want them to go really quick. So I basically want it to, well, fire obviously large explosives quite fast and also not explode. Now the plane part's relatively easy and the cannon part's slightly harder. Now, the cannon, well, is going to take up a lot of space, and that's why I'm building it first. I'm basically just starting the design where basically, yeah, it's basically a spud gun based cannon, which will basically just shoot, well, explosive forwards. So anyway, this was a pretty simple, just little, well, demonstration of how it worked, and also it was also, well, for me to test out if the cannon design did work actually. So anyway, so this is how the cannon would look for now. Although I was definitely going to change it as it took up way too much space. I mean, with this cannon, the plane had to be around 16 blocks tall, and that was not something that I really wanted. It's mostly the propellant, well, the cardboard that takes up that much space in the spud guns, but there are some ways to shorten it. But anyway, as you can see, it fires the explosive really far, and also, well, has a lot of recoil. Now, this won't really be bad, as it won't really be noticeable in the air, but anyway. Now, we obviously need to make this design better, it takes up way too much space, and I don't really want to fit that in a plane, so let's start. So for this cannon, I'm layering spud guns. So there's around 3 layers, but there's three, well, separate spud gun things, which all hit cardboard, which should send the explosive flying. Now, this is a should, as it might not, but anyway. So, yeah. So this has like 48 spud guns in it currently, but we're going to aim for around, well, 60. Now, this, well, was a pretty effective way as it made it longer, but not, well, wider or taller, and it also propelled the explosive quite far. Now this is really good because the planes are normally longer than they are wider, wide and taller. Although that's probably not true, as wingspan is quite wide. But this is basically going to be the fuselage of the plane. So anyway, I basically just, well, tried out this design a few times, and this design was made to be reloadable, but I still haven't started on the ammo yet. So I decided that I was going to add another more spud guns to get it slightly more power. This is just going to help in general, so there's not much point not to. The only thing it increases is recoil and also length, but that's not really a bad thing, is it? But anyway, now the cannon works fine, we're basically just going to well, make this thing, well, reloadable. Now it's going to have 4 ammo, and it's basically going to rotate, another ammo into, well, the actual firing chamber. Now currently this is looking pretty good, but of course it's still not a plane, but that's still the least of our concerns for now, as at the moment we just want to make it work. So first I added a barrel. Now this isn't going to be the final barrel, it's just that I want to make sure it can shoot through one before we actually build a plane around it. Because if it can't, it's going to be a lot more painful to work out later. Now, actually, it does work. Now this is good, except I think it might be losing a slight bit of velocity in the actual barrel, so we might need to change that. So yeah, as you see, the reloading system doesn't exactly work, but it only needs a few more improvements, and then it should. Now, this isn't really going to be a fast firing thing, but it's going to be more as a tank kind of taking out more damage every time it shoots. So then I started going into the barrel to make it more frictionless, well, using, well, blocks with less friction. So yeah, then I started building a plane around this thing, which was relatively easy, as I'm okay at building planes. It might not look good, but it will be, well, more of a shell. So anyway, this thing looked a bit odd after I added this little shell around it. It also like a boat, but that's because we haven't added the wings, so it's basically doesn't do much. So I added the tail, which looked okay, but I did forget the vertical stabilizer for quite a bit, which is a bit embarrassing, but anyway. I started working on the wings, and they looked okay. I also did realise that the tail was, well, off-center, but I didn't fix it, because well, couldn't be bothered really. So that's basically just going to annoy for the entire thing. But anyway, after I attached the wings, I basically started working on the engine. Now, these aren't actually going to do anything, and they're going to look incredibly small on the wing, which is my, well, slight stupidness, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Now, they kind of made it look slightly better, but I also think my creations are kind of doomed to not look very good, so it doesn't really matter. So this thing was, well, it looked very big. It looked a bit too big, as I really need to learn how to make planes properly, but it's mostly a bit too big because of the cannon inside, which is pretty possible to conceal without making this thing too big. So yeah. So I basically started working on making this thing actually move with your pitch and roll. Now this thing is obviously going to fly like a normal plane, and obviously it's going to have, well, all three axes of rotation, so it can be pretty versatile. So it was all pretty easy. I just had to make an S converter, which meant when I just press S, it would activate this sensor, which basically meant that I could, well, pitch up if I wanted to, which is also pretty necessary. So yeah, I basically just added more thrusters and getting logic gates and buttons. Now, eventually it all did work, and pretty well. Except, it was very heavy, the plane. It was quite obvious this, and also, it drifted a lot when it flew. So basically, if you turned, you'd still go in the same direction as you're going for, which is expected for all planes. But it was really bad in this plane. And this plane was awful to actually drive, to be honest. It didn't, well, feel very good, but anyway, I've got to carry on, and hopefully improve it. So, anyway. So, of course, I still had to add a few more stuff to this, but it was basically done. Now, the cannon actually works pretty well on this thing, right now at least. As you can see, we fired one round, and we could also fire another, which is looking incredibly good, as my planes usually aren't as good as this, especially when we're drifting like crazy. And as you can see, we didn't even explode until we hit the ground, and I don't know why either, which is kind of bad, but let's just hope that doesn't happen. So this thing was very close to being done. It wasn't my proudest work, but I didn't have much time to finish it, but it was okay. Now, the main problem that came in was the cannon as it exploded a lot, but that's kind of to be expected with planes and cannons. They're not really meant to mix, even though I tried to make them work. So anyway, I painted it green since, well, green's a colour you can't really go wrong with, and it looks okay to be fair, just not very cool. So anyway, here's how the problems start to come. It just randomly explodes. I can't do much to explain this, it just explodes. And not too much of a reason either, except, well, there might be, but I don't see why, as it seems a bit odd. But anyway, let's test this thing out. So I got a castle, which is, well, relatively big since I need a relatively big target, as I could not hit anything for the life of me on this thing. So yeah, I basically just tried to hit this castle, well, yeah, obviously with my explosives, but it did not go well. A big thing was that it was also relatively laggy while doing this, as the plane for some reason was really quite laggy, and dropped my frames loads at times, even though I can't really tell why. So anyway, I was flying into the target and hoped that it wouldn't explode, and it didn't, really. It did explode. Now, I think the reason is there's a piece of cardboard is still inside the plane, and it basically just like makes contact with other explosives and then explodes. Now this is due to the firing system having like spare pieces of cardboard which is just fired out. But I don't think this should make it happen instantly, as I don't know, it just seems a bit odd. But anyway, this is Square Mechanics, so let's carry on. But there was a bit of a problem. I was getting incredibly impatient, as I was getting, well, quite annoyed, obviously, because it kept exploding. Because I literally only wanted like 1 or 2 shots on the castle, but it wouldn't really happen. And a spoiler, we only got that 1 shot on the castle, which is actually pretty bad. Like, this is one of the worst planes they made. I made some bad planes. I'll probably take that back, since the problem was probably fixable. Just I probably couldn't be bothered. So anyway, we flew towards the castle, and it exploded again, and I can't even tell why. Well, the explosives didn't come out of the barrel, but I think it might be something to do with the high speeds, as speed and explosives do not really mix. So I want to try this with a bigger target, obviously. So what about a city? Well, it didn't do much except scatter the remains of, well, the plane across the city, which probably wasn't very appreciated. So anyway, this plane was relatively maneuverable, and it was actually, to be fair, it wasn't the worst thing to drive, as realistically, if you need to drive it, it was a fine plane. So if you need to aim it, it really isn't. As the thing did not fly in one direction for too long either, and also it's incredibly annoying to fire. Whereas Canada did pretty bad. See, I didn't really want to carry on as this thing did not work at all. I also couldn't be able to fix it because I was losing a lot of patience. And this thing only has 5 bearings in it, which is not that much at all. Well, that is actually probably less than the car that you can make in Scotland. Although you can make a car around like 3 bearings. So let's give this one last chance. So this thing was a lot worse than I expected, and I just didn't have enough time for it. I think if I could have actually solved it, it probably would have been a lot better. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, even though this video is going to be pretty bad. But anyway, bye.